So how people behave and how they see the world, or but in terms of technology as well, isn't? No, I'm not talking of a larger technology. I'm talking of the smaller technology, cell phones.
No, it does not. It has something to do with technology. Technology is just a simple goes way back.
So let's go back. The important thing, right? So sometimes the stories we tell are old stories that we told before. And every generation tells a story and we all think it's a new story. But it's an old story. All that's changed is the words for different things. So for instance, say a writer telling a story. Just say, I was having a hard time in life. Decides, you know what, let me give life another word. What can I call life? I was having a hard time in the Matrix. It's not a real place. It's a fictional place. If we find out what it actually means, it just means life. So then you start to see exactly how the story came together. Everything, it means something else. So instead of saying Christ,
For me,
but that's what I'm explaining to you. So in terms of telling the story, that we've all heard the story, but you just use different words. So in terms of life, you don't say life, you say the Matrix. In terms of Neo, what word is Neo being used to describe something else? Christ. In the first Matrix, they call it Jesus Christ. So that becomes another word. But no, I'm not explaining your perspective. I'm giving you a perspective to see it,
no.
to see the code, or you can't.
You and Chelsea are one thing.
They exactly.
They're one thing.
They exactly. Hold on.
So
Hold on. Just hold on. Jesus and God, are they separate? They one thing, but they separate. Jesus, God, and the Trinity are three in one. They're not separate things. So exactly what you're saying to me. I'm saying when you put that into code, that's what the code is saying. So your very story, where you realized at the end to say, some people will look at it and they'll say, you know what, it means Trinity is the one, she can fly, she's the one. But you actually seen, the truth is, they are the one. They are the one. It's not Trinity. The power doesn't lie in Neo or in Trinity. It lies in them. Both together. So they are the one. So that gives us a larger meaning in terms of we live on the planet as one individual. But if you two and you thinking as one, you can do more greater things. So if the world, if we thought as one, we'd deal with global warming. If it was one mind. But now there's all minds, there's people trying to sell you things, there's large corporations, there's government and all that. But in reality, the planet may have limited time. We're destroying it, right? But we don't act as one, isn't it? We act individual, country before world. You know what I mean? Race before the world. That's how the world works, isn't it?
For me, it's not country. Every individual wants power. Because they think with power comes fear.
Yeah.
So the people with power at the moment are working as the analysts for the machines that are controlling the system.
Yeah.
So the system holds you up. They educate you on the least amount of the system. They educate you on the system, not on the entire system, or how to.
So they educate you so you can
system.
feed the system.
Yes. And then you grow up and you join the system.
Yeah.
As an employee.
Yeah.
And then you get stuck in the system, you retire, and
Yeah.
you're still dependent on the system.
Exactly. So that's why I said that the resurrection story is several layers of storytelling. So several stories. That story that you were just telling me now, that's one of the stories. And then there's another story of Neo and Trinity, which is a continuation of the trilogy. Then there's the other story of the Matrix itself, the first Matrix story. And then there's the story of Reloaded, is in here as well. And then the story of Revolutions is in here as well. So those three stories are being told throughout the story. Everything's happening concurrently at the same time. So there's 7 stories, and your mind and people's brains will only be able to pick up on one story. So some will say it's a story about how Lana makes it. Oh, it's fun, it's meta. You know, some will just see it as a Matrix story. Exactly. So some people, when you watch it, your mind can't perceive all the stories that are happening. It will only perceive one story. So some people will pick up on another level. One person will just pick up on the Matrix story and how it happened in the past. And someone will pick up on just another story. But it's all the same story. It's one story. This is a continuation, but it's not just a continuation. It's got a difference. It's that you take all 3 of the Matrix stories that happened in the beginning and you compress them into one movie. This is the movie you get. And in this movie, you get their resurrection as well. So it's like how the original Matrix, on the one level, you could think of it as a map that was drawn. You ask people, please, draw a map of this village. And you demand, this map must be detailed. It must have everything that's in this village, every tree, every ant. And these village guys draw the map. The map is so detailed that it's laid over the whole village. It's bigger than the village. Now you can't figure out what extras are added to the map to make it, because it should just cover the village, isn't it? If it was that detailed, it's just the village, but it overlaps the village. So that now the villagers in the village can no longer see the whole village. All they're looking at is the map, isn't it? But how come this map is bigger than the previous village? The elders now might be saying, hey, no, there was another village before. The new people, all they see is the map. They're like, no, this is where we live. We live in this map. We don't care about the old village. But something else is on the outskirts because it's overlapping. What is that on the outskirts? So now you've got to leave your village to go explore the higher details of the map. To say, but not everyone does that. A few people, the ones who are unhappy, will say, maybe I'm unhappy because there's all this part that's shouldn't be in the village, isn't it? The map is expanded. So the ones who are unhappy go and search that. And they've found the story that's been recurring for years. The oldest story in the book. And all they've done is change the names. They changed the places, certain things, but they kept the same story. And it's us to ask, what is that story? You know what I mean? If you know that story, what they're arguing is then you can tell your own stories. So the one story that Lana's telling is her own story, her battle with Warner Brothers to get this movie made and everything. You know what I mean? Oh, it's going to be expensive to do this, but we want it because we need the money. So on the one hand, she's telling her own story, but right throughout the narrative. So where Neo says something, it's got a double meaning. On the one hand, he's saying something to someone who's in front of him, continue the Matrix story, but on the other hand, he's like his Lana, and telling us what happened to the Warner Brothers, you know what I mean? So it is so deep that, what did he say? It's so perfect, it can't be real.
Yeah.
It can't be real, because it's like what Bug says. Bug says, the more you search into it, the more you'll find. And if you watch this movie again, the more you search, the more you'll find in it. So that eventually you can find your own story within that. How does that work? So say that's like a reflection of our world, the story. Where's your story in that? Somewhere sitting here, lying on a couch, hugging a pillow. That's your story. That's your story. If within that world, Lana wanted to add your story in, what does she do? You're there, you're sitting, you're lying on the couch, you're wearing your glasses. That is your actual story. You know what I mean? Because a mirror is only a reflection. But now, if you play with things like time, like how first we were happy bullet time, you can see the bullet. Now you can really see the bullet. It's super bullet time, if in a sense you want to call it. And within that speech is giving you the statement of why we get manipulated by the system. It's abusing our fears and desires, the things we want and the things we're afraid of. Exactly, but the things we want and the things we're afraid of was actually dealt with this earlier in the movie, where the analyst tells him to say, we're desperately trying to keep what we have, desperately trying to find what we don't have, while seeking to hold on to what we do have. And that's how we live our lives. We live in fear, but we live with the desire. Our next car, our next this. But on the other hand, you fear, hey, your shit might fall apart. Will I lose my job? Will this happen? Will this happen? You know what I mean? And our fears are only scenarios, like little stories we write in our mind. They haven't happened, because here and now is all that matters.
Yeah.
And they actually told us that several times in the movie. Right? What did it say? You don't pick it up. Right, here we are. And here we are. This is where we are at this moment in time. And it's so summing and fitting, because from wherever the story began to where it got, here we are. And he even says it like twice. Here we are. And then someone else says, here we are. Because whatever, if you're looking at Nana's story, whatever her battle was to get the story made, the loss of her parents, you still have the fact, yes, she is. This is where she is. She's now someone who's made the resurrection, the next story. That's her life. But she's had this battle and these fights and this loss, and she's had hope, she's had despair, and that story is all embedded into this. And this is why I was saying to your mum that this story is bigger than the first one. I've watched the first one. Trust me, I've watched the first one like over 1,000 times. And I've researched it and searched every corner of it. And there's not as much information in that first one, in that old code. There's not enough information as this one. This one is packed with information. It's just so jam-packed that I think it'll take 2 lifetimes to find all the corners. But you got to the actual answer. They won. But how many are they? But they won. And that's the same thing like a 1 and a 0. They're 2 separate things, but if the world is quantum, because the 1 is a 1, the 0 also represents a 1. It's taking up a space, within the memory. So 1 and a 0 are the same. But in the quantum world, a 1 is a 0 or a 0 is a 1. So it becomes complex because they are 2, but they power in 1. When you have one world, one heart running the world, it becomes a different place, you know what I mean? Oh, but it's so deep. I promise. I was just like, what the hell? And even though you had a bit of duress, you were forced to watch it, and then I tried my best to keep quiet. Because normally, I'll be like, hey, did you see that? But I showed considerable restraint. Do you know what I mean? On the one, I guess you could say I rose above my programming. Because I'm programmed to ask questions, I'm programmed to do that, but I kept quiet. But there were some things that got to a point where I just couldn't resist. I just had to point it out here and say, can you see this? Can you see this? Like in other words, saying, can you read the code? know what I mean? But you still can't read the code, yet I've taught you so much. You have to think that even your nature for having a book and writing it down, you don't know if I taught you that. You know what I mean? Of course you're going to say school and what next. Don't worry, you know why your eyes hurt? Yeah, you know why? Because you never used them before. That's deeper.
It's very good.